Hey, it's Danielle from Made Possible by Pop Culture, welcoming you back to the podcast. As you know, if you've been here before, this is the pod where guests discuss influences from the world of pop culture on their past and present selves. It is September now, and so many of you have switched to pumpkin spice lattes already, but I'm always looking to keep summer going as long as I can, and my guest today is here to help with that. You've most recently seen her on Leanne, a new Netflix sitcom that dropped just last month, and earlier this year she was also on After Midnight, and of course, this whole time she's delivering very funny comedy on Instagram and TikTok. That's Hannah Pilkes. Hannah, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled.
Well, I'm excited because I feel like you're obviously having your own moment in pop culture right now, coming off of Leanne. I do want to talk about that in a few minutes, but what I really love is how you selected the show that dominated so many people's summers, their algorithms, their For You pages, their group chats, honestly, their last brain cells for the present pop culture influence you wanted to talk about today. And since we just recently came out of that reunion, I think we should dive right into that at the top of this podcast, even though I usually leave the present for the end. I want you to set up like what it is really and how it took over your summer.
The highlight of my summer, without question, is Love Island. Now, Love Island, we've got our USA, we've got our UK, we've got our Australia. I don't know if you knew there's like 36 countries of Love Island. It's an empire, and I love it more than anything. I love watching hot people consider dating each other. I love watching them get recoupled with no rhyme or reason.
Hmm.
I love watching them drink out of these water bottles with their mics around their necks. I mean, it is just the ultimate character study. And, I live vicariously through how fun they are. And then when they say they're my age, it's old age. Early 30s is sort of, you've thrown in the towel, so to speak, in the Love Island universe. It's
Well,
crazy.
it's an interesting, I like that you said character study because I do think it's an interesting one out of a very large group of dating shows to choose from. Obviously, this is
Yes.
the one that we just had the reunion a couple weeks ago. So, like, this is the one that is maybe arguably most recent and therefore relevant.
Yeah.
But that being said, it is such a specific show, especially this season, based on the way that America gets to vote.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about if you voted at all this season, and if you did, how do you vote? You don't have to tell me who you voted for necessarily, but I'm curious about like what your strategy is. And when you say like get recoupled with no rhyme or reason, if you're doing some of that on purpose to say, I want to mix this dynamic up, I'm going to vote for something weird.
Ooh, I love that. Am I here for the right reasons? Sort of
Right.
flipping the script. Now, I'm a chronically late person, and so I never watched Love Island on time. I was also watching it through Hulu, so I felt like that was always a day delayed, correct? Correct me if
You
I'm
well,
wrong.
yeah, it has to be like next day streaming. So yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I depends on if you even got there. I will say that I personally binged it when you were picked this. So I did the entire
Okay.
30. I didn't watch After Sun. I couldn't get that far, but I watched like,
Sure.
what 30 episodes in like 4 days. I felt insane.
Oh, I'm sure suddenly you're in a bikini. You're watching it outside on your
Oh, it's
patio.
hot. So yeah, I mean,
Hot, so you better with
yeah.
an inflatable pool. I never voted
Okay.
on this season.
Okay.
When I did the Edinburgh Fringe several years ago, I voted on the UK season.
Right.
And that, you feel powerful. Now, here's the thing. I wish I'd voted on this season because all too often I really disagreed with the voting choices. I felt like they did these cast members dirty. And I
Hmm.
don't know you, but I feel like Love Island should be about love. And it felt a little bit more like who do we want to break up? It felt a little bit more like Heartbreak Island.
Interesting. I will say that I agree based on the title. It should be about love, but it's, season seven, we know it won't be. I
Sure.
am curious when you say that though about which couples you were rooting for and which individuals you were rooting for, because I found those to be very different things.
I mean, of course, you know what? I need to be reminded of
Sure.
what's crazy? I watch it, I binge it, and then I
And then you
forget.
forget their names. I know, me too. I had my notes
First, I
are
know
kind of
Amaya. I
insane.
was voting for Amaya throughout, and I'm
Okay.
so glad Amaya got her justice because I feel like Amaya was done dirty for the whole season.
Mm.
I literally have to look up the cast members' names to remember. This is like true. It's so crazy. It like escapes my brain immediately.
Well, so in the beginning of the season, and I
Yeah,
think I'm going to use the word strategy, and I think people are going to get mad about that word choice. But in the beginning of the season, Huda and Jeremiah like coupled up
sure.
so fast, right?
Yeah.
So like no one's allowed to look at him. She was upset about everything, and
Yep.
she's a single mom, and I'm like, I want to root for you because you have a kid. Like I understand why you're looking for love. Like you want to give your kid a nice like traditional environment or whatever. I don't
Sure.
think this is the place for that. And
I was
so very
gonna
quickly
say,
I was like, "Oh no, I think you're," and I she has so many fans online. I'm like afraid to say this, but
yeah,
I don't think you're in the right place and I don't think you're ready for what you're trying to do with this like long-term commitment.
absolutely. Here's the thing. Regardless of whether I'm rooting for you on the show or not, whatever that means, once you're out of the villa, I'm a super fan.
Okay.
I am I have a total parasocial relationship that's not mutual. It's sort of just me stalking them, every cast member, including Huda, who I had my issues with. But that is our job as the viewers to sort of form these snap judgments. Now, listen, it kind of reminds me of the Bachelor franchise where someone comes on and talks about their kid nonstop, but is like, I'm doing this for my kid, but you're spending 3 months away from your kid. So it always
Yes.
feels a little strange to me.
And in
Now,
this case, she wasn't telling everybody she had a kid,
right.
which I
And
was
if
like, I don't think that's a great strategy either. And again, strategy might be the wrong word, but I was just like, I feel like that's the first thing you need to say. Like, because if he's not going to be okay with it, you got to get rid of him immediately. Like, that's
100%.
crazy to me that people go on these shows and pretend this isn't a part of their life.
Well, and how are you having any discernment or how are they proving to you that they would be a good father through a challenge that's a foam party where they eat jello out of each other's mouths? I don't
Yes.
know
Yes.
how that's the metric or the barometer for like he would be good at changing a diaper. For me, it felt a little bit convenient and a little bit like by concealing that she got to have her cake and eat it too and have her fun.
Mm,
I also feel like the kid was mentioned maybe 3 times the whole season. So that
yeah.
felt suspect to me.
I mean, I
Yeah.
do think I do think it's also fair to say like maybe she just wanted to go on and have fun, which is also
Totally.
valid. It's a summer, have
Yeah.
a vacation. But then I do turn it around and I look at like Nick and Olandria, who they leave at the
Sure.
end. There are a couple at the end, but like it takes so long to get there because they couldn't see it or they couldn't see it at the right time. And like other people said they saw it for them.
Right.
Do you feel like you saw it for them before it happened? Because I didn't, and I wonder what I missed.
I think that Love Island has a writer's room. I think it was very evident this season, and frankly, a phenomenal writer's room because they have a Gen Z person running the TikTok and paying attention to all the viral TikToks, which from the jump wanted Nick and Alandria to be a thing. It was like all those montages with the fray behind them
Yep.
saying like we ship them. I don't think that I still am not convinced that there's a real connection. I think that it's brilliant marketing. And
Yeah.
I honestly think it's a beautiful pairing and I want it to work for them. But most of their conversation was dominated by them being like, can you believe how crazy this is? I know. It's so crazy. Which is Love Island, right? They're like, we have so much in common and it's all nonverbal. It's just like sounds and
But it
like,
also, I mean, I do agree. Like the idea of you can leave the villa or you can couple up and stay. I'm like 100% they wrote that because they did not want to get rid of them. I 100%
yes,
agree with that part. I do wonder at the end, though, you're in that high pressure environment and you are relatively it felt normal in terms of like having conversations, being a couple in early stages until those challenges. And then those
sure,
challenges get thrown in and you're like, well, I just need to turn on overt sexuality. And
sure,
so once you introduce that aspect, if there's any spark, any attraction, I could see it grow. I just like
sure.
I think I missed something in the editing. I don't know. I That was part of it too, is like when there's so much going on and obviously they're editing everything. They're choosing what you're going to see, what you're not going to see, and they spend so much time sometimes on nothing.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
what's going on over here? Is there really nothing else that you want to show us, or is there a reason you're keeping it from us for like political
Yeah,
reasons?
I don't think they're ever going to go super hard hitting and that it has to be palatable to quite literally the every form of the masses. Like
Yeah.
it's just kind of an opinionless thing. To play devil's advocate on my own theory, because the whole love process is so truncated and expedited, someone like an Alandria who's a slower burn, and by that I mean maybe it takes a week and a half to
Right,
warm.
exactly. Like a
I think,
normal burn for the outside world, but on a
yeah,
show like this, they need you to
right.
go full throttle.
Even probably faster than the outside world. So I think perhaps we just didn't see the connection immediately because she didn't lead with being super physical. She
Hmm.
clearly needed to feel some sort of intellectual connection before she went physical. But I felt like Hannah was done so dirty on this show.
Mm.
She felt like she had the connection with what's the first hot guy, and then they sent
Oh.
her home, and then she was with the second hot guy,
Yeah,
and
but
then
see, I'm gonna say this and people are gonna get mad at me, but like a lot of the white guys look the same to me on this show.
oh
And so I didn't learn their names because they
no, I
weren't
don't
sticking around. And I was like, I know there's a few of them that might stick around longer, but like they were blurring in my mind.
it all blends. I mean, if I find them particularly hot, like Jeremiah began really, really hot in my head, but it reminds me of dating where anybody starts really hot. And then the more you get to know them, it is crazy how it evolves. And I imagine many people have dated me and, come breakup, they see me differently, It's just, that's just once the personality is paired with the
Yeah.
looks. But so many of these guys, they have the same haircut, they're wearing the same, well, they're not wearing
Yeah,
anything.
they're all just in bathing
Swim
suits and
trunks.
those mic
Yeah,
things. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, they're all like proper fit, couple tattoos, like, it's sort of a mind melt for me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fair. Now you are married, so do you force your partner to watch with you?
Force, oh my, I think Greg's more obsessed than me. And Greg and I met doing Groundlings.
Yeah.
So when the show comes on, one of us gets up and does the opening.
Nice.
We begin with it, and then we'll go into different rooms and send each other challenge texts. Like, I got a text, and then it's like, bobble your yobbles for the Berenstain Bear challenge. Or we'll go and call each other from different rooms as cast members. I mean, we're insane.
So,
But
okay, so you're like fully immersed in the world.
oh yeah. Ours
I
is like a
do.
full sleep no more immersive theater experience while we're watching Love Island. Yeah.
So this show reminds me a little bit of Big Brother for a few reasons. Obviously, much
Sure.
more sexual. Do you feel like it needs the live feeds that Big Brother has?
I'm content as is. To be fair, I didn't watch a ton of Big Brother. I think what was really fascinating about Big Brother was just watching them in real time experience
Right. And
stuff.
that
I
that is
felt,
kind of just what I meant, just in the idea of being able to turn on a feed at any point in any day and be like, they didn't put this in the broadcast. What am I missing about this couple?
well, I think you'd understand their connection significantly more if you watch 24 hours of the live feed, but also if there's not royalty-free pop music in
Of
between each
course.
segment. Do I care? I'm not sure. I listen sometimes in my car, I'll just listen to Love Island USA playlist, and it's all probably generated by a computer, but I love it. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know if that would captivate me,
Okay.
but I think you're right that it would certainly be informative, and I think it'd be much easier to judge because, of course, they're editing it to
Right.
to fit whatever narrative they've written in the writer's room. So, yeah.
Right. And the thing is, I think there's also the moments that people think won't make it on the air. Sometimes there's something in there where they let their guard down a little bit more that then you actually do get to see. And granted, that is also then just a lot of room for people on social media to kind of rip people apart further. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing, but I think it does maybe depend on
Yeah.
how good are the people in the house being? Are they turning it on when they think their cameras are focused on them?
I think initially I was like, all these people are aware of the cameras. And Big Brother or Love Island, I really do believe that you reach a certain point that you probably have such cognitive dissonance to the outside world that even
Yeah.
the you're so used to each other that I really do believe you forget that they're there. And that's when, in the case of a Big Brother, I'm like, oh my gosh, what would I say not aware that I'm being perceived? What idiosyncratic weird habit that I do would I that I wouldn't want people to see. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, I would say the same thing about Love Island because in Love Island, you're also sitting there in a bathing suit the whole time.
Yes.
And it's just like, I think that's more, I don't think I would be able to forget the cameras when I'm sitting there in a bathing suit the whole time. I think I'd be
Would
hyper
you?
aware of my angles.
And what if they like toot in their sleep? Like, I'm like,
Oh, and
what if
they do, and you just have to trust the producers will protect them. That's
you have
what's
to trust that
crazy.
they're choosing kindness? No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I don't trust people. So I'm like, no, I there was like a hot second when I was in college or right before college where I was like, I'm gonna apply for Big Brother. And then I was like, no, I'm not.
Oh,
Not even for that reason, because the challenges got more physical and I'm just not an athletic person.
I love that. You're like,
Um,
I don't have the dexterity
no,
for that.
I mean, yeah, no.
Survivor. I always love Survivor in theory,
In
and in
theory.
practice, I would be the one person that like gets so hurt on Survivor that they have to cancel the rest of the season.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, so I had a friend from college who went on Survivor, did get hurt. That's how she left, but they didn't cancel the season. She just had to leave and she couldn't win and she was
Put
mad.
her on a sling, and they were like, off you
Yeah,
go.
pretty much. They take you out on a boat or a helicopter or wherever. I don't remember where her season was set, but she was upset because like she really loved playing the game and like the injury. I don't want to say it came out of nowhere. Obviously, in that environment, it's pretty easy to get injured, but
Yeah.
I could see that would be, I think, worse than just losing regularly. So I
Oh,
don't know why these
totally.
people put themselves through it.
And Survivor seems hard, but then you have Big Brother, which is physical and requires you to know how to think analytically and to solve riddles. I mean, when I'm in an escape room with my friends, there's
Hmm.
like the math friend, there's the friend that's
Hmm.
good at like spatial dynamics, and then I'm morale. Like I'm just like, we're doing well. I'm panicked under pressure. I was not great on my SATs, but I'm street smart. So,
Right.
I could outsmart the proctor, but I'm just kind of bringing the vibes. Is the truth.
I really actually love
Vibes don't win
that.
Survivor. Maybe the mole or what's it
Right, there
called?
are other games for that. Yeah. Do you follow these contestants like when you find your favorites like Amaya, do you then follow them to other shows that they might do? Because a lot of like for example, a lot of these people pop up on the challenge or now there's, Love Island games, for example.
Once they leave the villa, I'm ready for the next crop of people in the villa. I struggle with that. And listen, not because I don't want them to make a living.
Sure.
Holy, so smart. They get on Love Island. Oh my God, is their engagement unreal on social media? I
Right.
mean, Taylor Swift level, they're getting millions of likes. I think it's one of the most brilliant things you could ever do for
Okay,
branding.
wait,
Yeah.
millions of likes, but then hearing on the reunion that people were hating on some of the women of color so much they were like putting their faces on George Floyd's body. I was like appalled. I had
Horrific.
never heard anything that bad from real. And maybe I'm just missing what's
No,
happening, but I feel like it's more intense on both sides of the spectrum for this show.
I'm sure. And I know on Love Island UK, there used to be a drinking, you could drink unlimited. And then they
Oh,
changed
right.
drinks maximum because if you're intoxicated, you're not aware of what you're saying and or how you're being perceived. And it was leading to a lot of bullying, and then you'd see like suicides after the show. No, I think all of this is such a giant social experiment, and people are going through different things mental health wise. People are maybe they're trying new medication, maybe they're drinking on medication, maybe they were completely gaslit by someone and we don't see the footage. No, and then if you're reaching such if you have such mass appeal, inevitably there's bigots and horrible people
Hmm.
within that mass appeal, and the internet is a really I think it can be a really beautiful place, and I think it can promote a lot of awareness, and then I think it can promote a lot of hate, and
Yeah.
why I kind of use it sparingly whenever I can.
Yeah. When you look at where Love Island does fit in the like scheme of these shows in general for you, what is the thing, the it factor that makes it rise to the top? That you're watching this over some of the other ones.
I think we watch shows and people try to write dialogue to create gripping, captivating characters, but there is nothing like watching real people, especially young, hot people, because it's such a specific time in your life where every day is your last, right? That's the way you're living. There's no repercussions, there's no credit scores, there's no awareness of the future. It's watching these hot people live in the present moment that I think is so infectious and a time that we all yearn to return to.
Hmm.
So it's the ultimate form of delicious escapism. I think the it factor is that we all we all want to like live our glory days again through hotter people than us.
Do you find though that like because you're watching Love Island, so intensely, you don't want to watch like the Love is Blinds of the world, the Sneaky Links of the world, because you don't want to do the comparison to like how are you doing it with your hot people over here? Or is there a place for everything because they're different formats?
I have a rule where I can't watch two reality shows at once, particularly Love Island, because that's like a long-term relationship. You're really committing to
Yeah.
months with a program. Also, when Greg and I are watching Love Island, our love is not alive because we're just watching all these people kiss and we're in sweatpants, basically nonverbal, not interacting, except when we're doing our act outs. But it's the least romantic time for us. So there have to be boundaries, right?
Right,
We have
right. If you did that all year long, you'd get
I
divorced.
mean, we would just become roommates. So, but it's also just, I like to pair it with something narrative. Love is Blind is a harder one for me to watch once they leave the pods because then they're not blind anymore
Yeah.
to each other. That to me just becomes a dating show again, which, I don't have the attention span for. What I love about a Love Island too is it's something that I can really put on passively, but
Mm.
it's plenty. I don't need another reality show at the same time. But if I was like at some family member's house in the middle of nowhere and I had to kill time, sure, I'd watch a million reality shows. But yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think so. The reason I partially ask is because you said it already, but like just the commitment level seems heavier with Love Island because of how many episodes they are and how closely they come together.
Yeah.
But then when it is over, I also imagine because you're immersed in it for so much at such a short amount of time, the crash out must feel harder.
Oh
No?
yeah.
Oh,
And
yes.
then
Okay.
there's guilt. There's like, I canceled plans for this. I ate ramen instead of cooking for this. I didn't reach a deadline because of
Oh, God.
this. Make a comedy video because of this. I maybe missed a self tape because of this. I mean, the level of commitment is unreal. And it is the power of being addicted to something. And for me, it was Love Island USA. The crash is actually the opposite for me in that I get my life back. And
Okay.
this is I don't like Love
Well,
Island means I am getting hours back.
yeah, well, that's what I would to hear you say. Maybe I missed a self tape. I'm like, oh no, that is
It
more
was
commitment
probably
than
just
I
like
think it deserves.
yes, and but that it is toxic in that way for me. In that when Love Island ends, I am prolific. I am productive. I am unstoppable. And so I think the all or nothing of it is like I know there's another season of UK ready to go, and I can't do it. I have to
Mm,
space it out for a few months. Yeah.
that's fair. And you actually mentioned, a second ago, like mixing it with narrative. I do want to like use that as a segue into talking a little bit about Leanne because I know you didn't film it recently enough where it was interfering with violence per se. I'm not trying to draw that kind of parallel, but I did want to talk a little bit about filming that environment in general, being on a soundstage. For people who don't know, like it was shot multicam, it was shot on a
Yeah.
soundstage in Warner Brothers. You had a live audience, which
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people have that experience anymore. There are very few of those shows happening. If you don't do
Yeah.
stage work, like if you're all the internet comedy is great. I watch so much of it, but it's such a different vibe to like film something with a few of your friends and then to film something on a stage. And I want to talk a little bit about like that transition for you in terms of like how it felt and what you liked about it and what you feel like maybe you still want to work out for a potential season two.
Sure. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I, I do probably an equal amount of live performing as I do internet and had just been on tour with Paul F. Tompkins
Okay.
like that whole year leading up to the show. I think I come most alive when there is an audience. So when I was auditioning for the show and talking to Susan McMartin and talking to Chuck and talking to Nick Bakay, they very much said like Leanne is also most excited for the live element and that she's a live performer
Right.
and she tours. That's I think where I felt least spooked was
Okay.
once it was live
Okay.
because it's just an actionable and immediate way to read how something's performing,
Right,
which
but to me that would be scarier because like if you're doing stand up on the road or live shows on the road that you've written, like you're just doing them regardless of how the reaction is. But on these
sure.
sitcoms, like they're reading the room and like giving you a rewrite on the spot, which like
Right.
I think that's so hard to be like, I memorized all these lines. Now you're changing it. How do I find the tone in the moment? And like,
Right.
I don't know.
I think the longer it went on, the longer you just understand that it's this really cool machine and that everyone's working together and it's not personal and you all just want the best product possible. So you're just kind of along for the ride. I mean, what I will say is my very first taping, I had like four lines
Mm.
and I walked in, I walk into the church and I land in front of Kristen and Leanne and they're waiting for my line and it all went away. And I had this flash of, oh my God, what if I can't do this? What if I realized in this moment I'm not going to be able to film this because it's never going to stick. And I looked at Kristen and I said, "This is a lot." And she was like, "Yeah, it's a lot." And then we did the second take and it was okay. It's almost like I just needed to demystify
Mhm.
what it is. And at the end of the day, it's like you will get the shot you need. But the most overwhelming thing, I think, is walking into this extraordinary, massive soundstage with hundreds of people working together and just wanting to do the project justice. I think that took some adjusting to, which is this is where you work now. It's okay. Everyone's rooting for each other.
Right,
So, no matter what, we're all building and it's collaborative. Yeah.
right. I mean, we don't get, I will say, we don't get a ton of your character in the beginning of the show. I feel like we get to know her better at the end of the season when she then leaves.
Yeah.
And I will say this with love, I definitely feel like she joined a cult. So I'm curious for you as like I'm imagining you don't have all of these scripts ahead of time to know where she's going. So like if you get that first pilot script and like she's going to church after like a hard night out, what are you building in terms of who she is and what her life is outside of like that night of partying?
Right. Well, I think what's so interesting about a season one of a show is that everyone is just making so many discoveries as the show goes on, as you're learning about different personality types and different chemistries and different ways that people work together. And going in, really, I just knew that in my mid to late 20s, I could absolutely relate and resonate with loving my family because I have a really close relationship with
Hmm.
my parents, but also being at a really messy point in my life. And that the kind of dichotomy of those two things,
Yeah.
they can both exist, but it really does mean I definitely felt more like I was a victim a lot of the time. I definitely felt chronically tired and wronged and lost. And so I think going in, my understanding of Josie was she's super strong-willed, but she's really kind of figuring out the journey that she wants, but she's very independent. So those three things were kind of in the back of my brain. And that messy doesn't mean that they're not emotionally mature in some ways, or doesn't mean they don't love their family. It just means that they're maybe scattered and the future is kind of unclear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I do think we get a better sense of that, like I said, as the show goes on and as she's realizing, like, oh, I want to try this. I want to
Yeah.
try this for my life, moving, pretty far from the family. And then like we only get to
Yeah.
see you on FaceTime at the end of the season. But
Yeah.
like that to me felt very important as coming from, I don't mean to make this sound small town in any sort of like hokey way, but like I
Yeah.
grew up in New York. I know you lived in New York for a little while. Like to me, if you were to set a close family in that environment, it is a little bit of a different vibe, I think, than
Totally.
they were living on this show. And so to me, it also
Yeah.
felt like you have to break out of this nest to really be who you need to be because they're
Yeah.
so intertwined. And
Totally.
I know the show like can't really explore every little nuance of that when it's dealing with so many different characters, but I am wondering if there were things that were originally maybe in certain scripts that didn't make it in the final edit, where you do feel like you got to see a little bit more of that earlier.
It's all like kind of a blur at this point, but what I will say was certain no matter what was that we wanted to experience Josie finding some sort form of freedom for herself and figuring out fragments of herself. And I think, in the later episodes we hear that the traditional dynamic that's around her, her brother, the way her mom spent her 20s and 30s was having kids, getting married, and learning that this maybe isn't in the cards for her or not something that she's passionate about. I think that was the pervasive element throughout, no matter how scripts
Yeah.
changed, was she's really resolute in that her life isn't going to look how their lives look, and that's probably kind of difficult for them to understand and even for her to reconcile with. So I think her getting out of Dodge and having her own experience was really important.
Mhm.
And I think the things that evolved and changed was, what does that look like? How does she get there? And where's she headed? And in this case, it's this farm in San Diego,
Farm.
nebulous. We'll
I'm gonna
see
use the
what,
air quotes on that farm, but sure.
But maybe she's not wearing a bra and she's living her best life and she's free living. Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it is a little bit of those pieces of her story. Maybe this is a broader question going back to what I was talking about, how things change on the side, on the fly during tape nights. But you're working with a stand-up comedian. You are also a comedian. You're working with Kristen, who has been on a million sitcoms and is used to these changing lines. Ryan, whose line is it anyway? How much improv could this first season allow when it's still finding its footing?
Sitcom really is not improvised. It's not. It's tightly scripted, and there's a method behind that. I think there's a real intentionality behind it being tightly scripted, and that especially in the first season, there's so much that you want to achieve, and there's so much exposition, and there's so much story that you have to tell that I think, and I imagine these people aren't super lived in yet. So
Mm,
I think honoring what's written and kind of sticking to that. I feel like the improv for me kind of came outside of filming when I would just sit with myself, or the improv of getting to know the family outside of when we were filming, so that we could kind of establish the closest thing to a familial relationship without
right.
without being an actual family, which I really felt. I mean, Celia Weston became like such a dear
Mm.
passion, and I went to her birthday and I really was like, this is my grandma. This is so wild. Um, but I'm so curious for the future of it and that and what that would look like, because I know, if we could keep rolling, there's so much more that we could all say to one another. But
Right. And it's interesting that you bring up those moments outside because, like, so many times, especially because this is a family show, there are moments where there used to be, because I do feel like now today, maybe this is all done digitally, but there used to be moments where they'd be like, we're getting you together to take photos, family photos that we can like put around the house as a set, right? Like, is
yes,
that
yes.
stuff that you're talking about in terms of finding dynamics? You guys did all that?
Oh yeah, well, first of all, if you look at the living room set, those are all my actual childhood photos. There's a photo of me as a little kid. We made a hat out of styrofoam for this Easter hat contest at Tavern on the Green, and it's a styrofoam chick with feathers on it. And I didn't win the contest, but every time I see it, it warms my heart and it tickles my mom and dad so
I was gonna
much.
say that is a better prize for both you and your parents. Yeah.
But the family photos were taken after our first day of rehearsals. So that was
Okay.
so interesting. I would have loved to. And then we took a family photo actually as we wrapped, and even the body language is so different. I mean,
Yeah.
that's acting. It's so fascinating. I know my friend shot a movie where they shot the last scene on the first day and the first scene on the last day, and just being able to really jump
Smart.
into that familiarity. But I do recall on that first day being like, "Is it okay if I for arm in arm? Is it, to my brother?" And
Yeah.
he's now feels like my brother. He's actually born in the same hometown as me. It's
Oh,
so
that's
crazy. We
crazy.
just happened to, but yeah, that kind of learning about one another and comfort levels was really interesting. Yeah.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, this is also a good segue because you said hometown. So I want to go to your past influence. I want to talk about your past, which I will say this up front. Again, I would want you to set it up so that you can put it in your words. But I love that you chose this because I haven't gotten to talk about something experiential yet. And
Uh,
this is that. I mean, I obviously you'll talk about how it is for you, but like it brought back so many memories for me of like what this experience was. And like, I feel bad for kids today who can't do this. So first of all, tell us what it is, but also tell us like what age range are you talking about that it was like influential and important to you, and where physically in the world were you?
So my past pop culture craze was Blockbuster. And you're right, it's a location, but it was an experience. I grew up in New York City, but we moved to the suburbs of Philly when I was in third or fourth grade. And that's when I started to understand and could pick out my own movies, had a bit more autonomy in that way. We also lived a 2-minute walk to the Blockbuster. So the independence I felt on a slumber party walking with my best friend, typically my friend Allison Frank, now Allison Freely, we would walk, we would pick out our candies, we would have a movie in mind, but a lot of the time that movie was out of stock. And then you had to really recalibrate.
Hmm.
You had to reconsider your whole night. A lot of the time, we were trying to get an Olsen Twins movie, and When in Rome wasn't available, but Passport to Paris
I love
was.
it.
They're very different experiences. It really was. It just, I think something that we've lost in the modern, more modern technology facing
Yeah.
world is a patience and a deliberateness and anticipation of an experience. You know,
Hmm.
watching Titanic as a kid, I remember you had to flip the VHS halfway through. Oh, so these
Yeah.
must have been VHSs first when
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah. Because you said you were like 9. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. So I don't know if there were, if I was ever at a Blockbuster when there were DVDs. That's when Netflix started to come around, was kind of shortly after that, when I was like
Yeah.
12.
But Netflix didn't have a huge stock yet. Because I will
No, but they would
say that
mail you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think it did depend on what you were looking for. And I think also, like, was Netflix more convenient in the beginning? No, because you were sending away for a DVD that then had to be mailed to you. So it wasn't as instantaneous as walking 2 blocks,
Yes, totally.
seeing what and this is where I will show my age and be on my soapbox about my issue with how things are today is that it's so hard to know what you're even looking for. You have to go in,
Yes.
search for
Oof.
something specific if you're typing it into a
Yeah.
Netflix. So even back when Netflix was sending DVDs, I felt that way because it was like you had to already kind of know, like to try to browse was hard, but
Yeah.
to walk into a Blockbuster or a bookstore, like you could see in front of you, this is what my options are. And yes, they are fewer. I will
Yeah.
say that for myself, I was a fan of a soap opera actor, and she had done this, like, no offense, but shitty little independent film that I wanted to see, and they didn't have it. And so I ended up going to like my local mom and pop in like independent rental place. They had to
Yeah.
order it for me from like China. But like you
Wow.
could do that. It just was
Right.
harder, but like but you could go in and you could see like, well, here's what my options are. If they don't, as you said, if they
Yes.
don't have what I want, what can I pivot to? And like, what will that mean? And
Yeah.
I don't know, there was something about like flipping it over, reading the back, a little summary, like
Yes, reading
marketing
the
thing.
back. I mean, you nailed it. Like, I also think now the paradox of choice on any streamer is so overwhelming. And at the same time that you're watching, you have your smartphone in front of you. So you're probably scrolling social media. I think it's almost like choosing restaurants out in LA. I'm so prone to choose something that I'm familiar with because
Yes.
I'm so overwhelmed by choice. I loved reading the backs of the movies. True presence and like that. I don't mean to say mindfulness, but you really did
No.
have to consider and have some forward thinking of like, all right, well, this one's 2 hours and 20 minutes, but
Yes.
we're here at 9 p.m. and I'm 8. And you know, is my mom gonna let us watch the whole movie, or are we gonna have to like watch the rest of it for the next sleepover? And this one's ours, so my mom needs to be with me,
Mm.
you know, and the Blockbuster card. Just, you know, it's the same thing as like I don't love a Kindle because I just love to turn the pages of a
Oh,
book.
interesting.
I
Okay.
love the physical movie. And my husband is a total cinephile. So we still have a million DVDs. And they worked at Videotech in South Pasadena, which is one of
That's
those
awesome.
records, you
Yeah.
know, mainstream movies, but also many foreign films, many independent films, many experiential, experimental films. So that's still very much alive in our house. But that beyond buying the movie or renting the movie,
Yeah.
then you get to the concessions area
Okay.
and you get to pick out what you want. And these are candies of the time. I'm talking the squeeze goo that was
Yeah.
blue apple or blue raspberry that would turn your tongue blue. And it was vile and probably why I have like 30 cavities to my, you know, but I loved and the baby bottle pop.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you something about that.
Yes.
Nobody remembers this. I feel like it's a Mandela effect. Do you remember the bubble jug gum?
Bubble jug. Is that the tape?
No, so it was a little jug. I'm making a gesture for anyone who's listening on the actual podcast on YouTube. You can see the gesture. It's not offensive, but it was a little jug and it was filled with like bubblegum pellets that we'd pour them into your mouth and they'd become gum. But at one point, I swear, and I cannot find this even on Google, they had a blue jug and it was filled with what was essentially Oreo, crushed Oreos, like Oreo powder. They weren't allowed to use the name Oreo. It was not from Nabisco, so I forgot what they called it. And Blockbuster in my neighborhood used to sell it, but I can't find it anywhere. And I'm like, what? Backwoods bodega guy came in and sold these as Lucy's that were not real candies. Like, that's how I
Right.
feel now.
And that you just nailed something, which is the weird consistency of candies at the time. I mean, crushed cookie powder,
Doesn't sound real.
Pop Rocks, Warheads,
Yep.
stuff that questionably probably isn't good for your mouth,
No, not at all.
for the enamel on your teeth. But it was a lawless time. I mean, we were still smoking in restaurants and airplanes. It was different back then. And I've never seen that, but I do remember the tape
Yes, yeah.
like immediately lost its flavor as soon as it
Yes.
was in my mouth. And going to the Blockbuster and being like, I have to choose only one. And that was I
Mhm.
think Nerds ropes were a thing back then. And now the Nerds gummy clusters are back. Like there's a
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
really,
Yeah.
I don't know if I like the taste or if it just reminds me of a simple.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I just never really like when I was a kid, if it wasn't chocolate, I didn't think it was worth it.
Me
So I
too.
think for me, it is now I don't eat it because I have no nostalgia attached to it.
Sure. And what was your chocolate of choice? Mine was like I'd get like a Goobers or a Whoppers.
Okay, so everyone's gonna judge me, but Godiva.
Okay. Okay, Miss
They can
Paris.
sell that at Blockbuster for anybody listening at home. My mother worked in Avon Products corporate, and so for Christmas or for any major holiday, everybody would send her boxes of Godiva because she had a big sweet tooth, and then she passed that on to me. And so, like, I just got so used to eating that, and it was so sweet and rich that, like, I won't
Wow.
to this day, I don't think Hershey's is sweet enough or good enough. So
That's
that is the real answer. But like, if I were going to a Blockbuster if they had like a Mounds bar or like Junior
sure.
Mints, like dark chocolate. Even as a kid, I like dark chocolate.
I
But
just love
you,
imagining you like checking the back. Oh, 80% cacao. Sorry, I'm gonna have to pass. The Godiva
I
was for
mean,
my stockings at Christmas, but that was reserved for our Rochers. And
sure. Yes, those are good too. But I
yes,
will say, like, because she got so many of them, they lasted well beyond Christmas. So that's part of why I think I just got so used to it. But
sure.
you mentioned snacks. I want to know on a typical like sleepover night, if you're walking in, what you said Olsen twin, but like what genre typically would you look for? What snack would you pair it with? And were you ever the person that would then try to buy the movie posters after? Because I was that kid.
I was never a merch movie poster person, which is so interesting. Even now, I get presents. Like, I love Jim Henson. I love anything Jim Henson.
Mhm.
And so, we'd be renting Labyrinth, we'd be renting Dark Crystal, we'd be renting Muppets, anything. But also, my sister is 7 years older than me. So at the time, she ended up going to film school. She was this aspiring filmmaker. So she'd be ordering Requiem for a Dream.
Yep.
I mean, and then I'm 7 and she's covering my eyes for all the, most of the parts that I shouldn't be watching. But I do think that was really formative in my appreciation of cinema was
Mhm.
that I had this older sister who, was my muse and I could, follow in her footsteps. But it was either, a fantasy movie, Little Princess, Madeline, loved any sort of escapism, or it was an Olsen twin or Lindsay Lohan something,
Okay.
a Parent Trap. Parent Trap
Mhm.
was rented that had a Parent Trap journal that I would write in and pretend I was a twin. I don't know,
Oh,
but
that's an interesting character study right there.
I know, and yeah, I think I thought the journal was my twin. Incredibly meta, but I was reading entries back, and many of the entries are about my trips to Blockbuster. But
Okay.
yeah, never horror, never
Okay.
been a big horror or thriller person. To this day, I'm not a John Wick or I don't a spy movie person.
Hmm. Did
No.
you find that you were renting the same thing over and over to the point where you should have just purchased it?
I to this day, I think this is my ADHD. I'm a super novelty person.
Okay.
So the movie that I've watched more than any other movie is Labyrinth. I'll watch that probably twice a year.
Nice.
And okay, Serendipity. I mean, that's one of my very favorite movies of all time. And that's the music from Serendipity is in my wedding. And
Wow.
we consider it a Christmas movie. There's Christmas movies that we will rewatch. I love the Jim Carrey Grinch.
Hmm.
I've said it a million times. Um, but no, and Titanic. Titanic was a big one for me. That introduced me to love and
Mhm.
relationships,
So you're a little
car.
younger than me. So you were around how old when Titanic came out? Do you,
What year was that? 2000?
like 98, 96?
98.
Oh
So
my God,
I
everyone
would
on
have
the internet is
been
yelling at me. Hold on, I can Google this, guys. I am on a computer.
four
Uh,
or five. I'm five.
I like that I Googled Titanic and the actual boat came up. 1997.
Yeah, so I was like four and a half around there.
Oh, so you didn't see it initially.
No, I that's the thing. I watched that in kindergarten. I know I did. And you're so fascinated by anything like raunchy related. So my friends and I would act out the in the car, she puts her hand
Right, right,
and
right.
slides her hand down, and we'd all alternate and we'd giggle. Oh my God, you're sliding your hand down the window. What does that mean?
I
We
wasn't
didn't do
worried about
acts
that.
like
I was worried about like a 4.5, 5-year old watching these people die. And granted, it's the
that.
movie is they're not dying, but like it was a real event. Real people did
Oh
die.
yeah. Yeah. I think I grew up in New York City, and my
Mhm.
parents from a really young age were like, let's just expose her to things. If
Mm,
it makes her scared, then they weren't I wasn't watching bloody horror movies,
sure.
but I do think that, which I really appreciated about their parenting, and to each their own, I did feel really mature and adult. And I think there's something
Yeah.
about growing up in New York City as well that kind of like breeds this kind of independence.
Yeah, my parents were the opposite. Like I grew up in New York, so there was a lot of things that just by growing up in New York you get to do younger, but they then
Sure.
I think overcompensated by being like, we can't, certain media is too adult for you. We're gonna not. And to this day, like it's crazy shit. Like it's stuff that if I hadn't sought out later, I wouldn't have the career that I have because I would have just missed everything important. Like they didn't
Right.
want me to watch The Simpsons when I was little. And I
Wow.
was like,
Yeah, I
and
get
when The Simpsons started in like 89, I was like 4 or 5 years old. So
right,
like I
right.
kind of get that.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't feel like there's anything bad in The Simpsons, but
Right.
that's what is so crazy about, I think, sometimes the things that we're scared of, like none of this stuff is
Yeah.
real, right? Like it's all scripted. We're not
Well, it's interesting. I think that oftentimes, like when it's like, I'm afraid my kid's going to cuss, or I'm afraid they're going to do the
sure.
thing.
Oh,
My argument against that is that we really only want to, we live as kids through rebellion. So I think we only want
oh
to rebel
yes, that's a good point.
taboo. So when I was seeing these things and hearing these things and it's not taboo, it's like, all right, well, that's old news. Who cares?
But also, like,
Yeah,
if you're growing up in New York, you're going to hear the cursing anyway. Like, I was
exactly.
3 years old
Exactly.
hearing my father curse, repeating it. So, how is that? This
Right,
is for
right,
my
right, right.
therapist. This is not for you to answer. But, like,
Yeah,
that's
this is
what's
all
so
we can spend
fascinating
hours unpacking this.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I talk to people for this podcast and I'm like, how old were you? And someone's like 4 or 6, I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. Like, what would my life have been if I had
Sure.
Pee Wee Herman at the age it was meant for? As
Oh,
do you know
big
what I
one
mean?
for me.
As
Yeah.
opposed to
Oh
like
my God.
years later when I'm too old for it, but I want to understand what everybody was talking about. So,
Right. It's hard. Things are very much not only in like a what's appropriate sort of way, but tonally
yeah.
things. I would watch fairy tale theater a lot. We would rent that. Shelley Duvall's fairy tale theater. Loved.
Nice.
But even watching that now, I mean, I love it, but it definitely feels of that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. But that's kind of what's fun about it, I think, too, to like remember
Totally.
where you were at that time. This might take this to a slightly depressing place, but I do want to know if you can talk a little bit about the last time you were in a Blockbuster. Do you remember? Is that something like you didn't know probably that it would be the last time? Because we didn't know that it was going to go bankrupt well, we maybe should have seen it coming, but whatever. So I'm curious if there is any sort of were you
When did it go bankrupt? Do we know?
Great question. I don't off the top of my head because here's the thing about that. There were still a few of them in certain places operating even
Yeah.
after they like filed, right? So they filed about I think 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But the last store didn't close 15 years ago. So that's why I'm kind of asking is if you have any
Yeah.
memory attached. Like a lot of people, not me, but a lot I should have, when they thought, oh, my local one is closing, they ran to like get stuff.
Right.
To be
Right.
like, I want a piece of this history to like get that last Blockbuster card or like buy a thing that had a Blockbuster sticker on it or whatever. Sounds like
Yeah.
that's not something you did. So I'm just curious if you have any memories around it at all.
I think it's like one of those things that you don't realize was so cool and that you'll never get back until until it's gone, right? Like
Hmm.
I also think I was phasing out of the age where I was having sleepovers with friends anyway. And I think it's this, like we've all done, it's like Redbox was obsolete
Hmm.
once we had streamers, and then eventually streamers will become obsolete in some way because we have X new
Something
thing and we can
else.
watch the hologram in our house or something. But I don't know. I would imagine it's around third grade, and then and or maybe third or fourth grade.
Wow,
Oh,
that was a
I wish
long
I wish so
time
badly I
ago.
could go back in time and go now and see A, what my attention span's like. B, if yeah, do we peruse anymore? I know I
Hmm.
peruse at the Target, but would I wonder if I would just be so quick and wouldn't savor it the same way.
But that is, I think that is just the thing that comes with aging. But I also think that is a good comparable example, Target, because Target has a small media section. There are DVDs, there are CDs, there are books. Like you can still browse a little. There are a few Barnes and Nobles left. Like there are still
Yes, I
local,
love a Barnes and Noble.
So that's what I'm saying. Like if you are willing, if you have like I do feel like it is the kind of thing that as adults, it's like I'm gonna carve out time to do that.
Yeah.
When I was a kid. I'd be like faffing around, walking around Third Avenue. I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Like we'd be walking around Third Avenue, like we'd be killing time by wandering
Yes.
into a Blockbuster, even if we weren't
Yes.
looking to rent something.
Well, because you couldn't be
So
on your phone too.
yeah,
Like it
we
was
didn't have phones.
you
So
had to kill time a different way. Like I wonder what everyone was like at the airport. Were they all just like staring at each other and actually
yes,
engaging? And it's
I'm
funny you
old
brought up
enough to
Barnes and Noble.
remember that. Yes.
Barnes and Noble. I was on 68th in Central Park West, and so we
Hmm.
had the Blockbuster right across a couple blocks away. And this is before I moved to Philly. But
Hmm.
then we had the Barnes and Noble with the extraordinary, it's now a Century 21, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, Amazing kids section. And that's where I spent so much of my childhood. And that I will go and revisit frequently.
Sure.
Not that one, but I'll go sit in a Barnes and Noble because I feel like I recognize the inherent risk that it could go away. And so I
Yeah.
pick it up as much as I can.
Yeah, and I do think it's easier to spend more time because you can sit down and
Yes.
read a book. Like it's
Yes.
almost like a library, which is why they're disappearing because
Yeah.
but like you can't sit down in Blockbuster and watch a movie unless you're just going to watch the one that they're already playing and you
In
walked
the,
in
with
at
the
the right
teeny
moment.
TV in the corner. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. So yeah, I will say that I used to do that a lot actually in high school. I went to high school in Manhattan, and so I
Mm,
would take a bus in, and my school was like 6 blocks north of the where the World Trade Center used to be. And now it's obviously the new World Trade Center, but there used
right.
to be a Borders in like right in front of where the towers were. And I used to
Mm,
spend so much time, and they had DVDs, but I used to spend so much time just like going section to section, like killing
yes.
time, honestly.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Even as a
at
kid,
that
I was
point I
like,
did have a phone, but you couldn't do anything on it other than make calls. So
right, exactly. Exactly. It was like what now, what's so funny? Those phones that just make calls are like some of the most expensive phones because
yeah,
they know they're like, oh, you want sensory deprivation? No worries. It'll cost you. But I also remember at Barnes and Noble as a kid going into the raunchy book section and reading that,
Mhm.
going into the self-help section and being so fascinated by, the concept that someone was like getting over a breakup. It
Right.
was really fun exposure to like mature
Well,
things.
and right, and it's like, what is the equivalent of that today?
Right,
That's
right,
what
right,
that's what I keep trying to get out of my friends who have kids. I'm like, because they're just scrolling on Amazon, being like ordering, and I'm like, but how did you find that? How do you know you want to, like, how can you try new things?
right. Exactly, exactly. No, it's blessing and a curse, you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, I know I do want to also make it very clear. I do know how that works. Like, there are algorithms that serve you things that like the people who are paying for the ads think you want. I'm not
Sure,
ignorant. I'm choosing to pretend it doesn't exist because I don't
sure.
like it.
I
Uh,
get it. I get it. I'm the same as you.
Excellent. So, okay, last question before you go. If you could walk into a Blockbuster today, how are your tastes different from the last time you were there? What's the genre you're picking today, or what's the movie you're picking today? What's the snack you're picking today?
I want to say that I'm way more pretentious, but the truth is that I would still want something corny and campy, especially when you're going to a movie rental place. I want that comfort food. I want to watch something nostalgic. What's coming to mind immediately is I might rent like a fried green tomatoes. I
Hmm.
love a Kathy Bates. So it's like a little more of a mature palate, but I would still want to get that goo because I'd want to try it. I love a baby bottle pop to this day, but I would throw a chocolate in there too. I was the opposite. I didn't really loved chocolate growing up, but now, I mean, I can't get enough. So maybe a Goobers,
Hmm.
a good old, just a Coca-Cola classic, and maybe some fried green tomatoes. And yeah, just my goo and my baby bottle pop.
Again, I don't want to bring this down, but I don't know that they still make baby bottle pops.
Yeah, but, well, okay, this is really
Oh
interesting.
no.
Shout out to one of my favorite bookstores in Pasadena called Romans.
Yeah.
They have it's such an amazing gift, which I bought for a lot of the crew on Leanne because we were all different ages. It's candy of that decade. So they have
Oh, I've
the
seen that.
20s up until the 2000s, and there was a baby bottle pop in one of them.
Oh, good. Okay. Because
So
sometimes I do know you
one
can,
exists. Yeah.
well, you can find these things on the internet, but sometimes I'm like, how old is that? You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
from back in the 90s and it's just saved in a closet somewhere, or
Absolutely, yes. With the Furbies.
that's,
Up with the Furbies. Yeah.
yeah, I worry sometimes about those things. As somebody who was too excited when they brought back Dunkaroos, I will say that. I was so,
Love a Dunkaroo. Love a Dunkaroo. I just went to an arcade and they had with your tickets you could get, and it was like Dunkaroos, Warheads, Laffy Taffy. That was tricky for my teeth. Laffy Taffy,
yeah.
that one I don't need to return to, but it was, oh, like the big Warhead, or not the Warhead, the giant Jawbreaker that
Oh,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
little by little lick, anything from the Times Square store that was like a massive candy something. Yeah.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, I think this is everybody's cue to go get a snack. When looking back on today's episode with Hannah, in order to tell you where to find the things that we discussed, I do acknowledge that it's a little bit harder than usual because for her past influence, we talked about Blockbuster, which was an experience unto itself, and it's one you can't really recreate today. When we say, where should I watch something? These days, you're pretty much scrolling through streaming. You're not walking into a store and browsing aisles. So maybe if you're so inclined, you can marry those two things and watch a one season sitcom about what it might have been like to work at Blockbuster back in the day. That is aptly titled Blockbuster. It stars Randall Park and it's streaming on Netflix. And good news for you, because Netflix is also where you can see Hannah in her first season sitcom, Leanne. And then, of course, Love Island is streaming on Peacock. So I hope you had fun with us today. And if so, please come back next week for the next episode of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast.